Hello and welcome. This is Sayan Nag from Sportskeeda MMA. Today we have with us here a very special guest, Mr. Arjun Chipalkatti, who is part of the expert panel on the ultimate guide to UFC on Sony Sports Network and Sony Live.
Thank you
It's a
so
pleasure to
much.
have you here on the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since I heard about the possibility of it happening. I'm really, really excited to get started. So, Chalo?
So without further ado, Arjun, let's jump to the upcoming stacked UFC 289 pay-per-view scheduled to go down at the Rogers Arena this weekend in Canada, Vancouver.
Yeah.
Uh, it's co-main event between Charles Oliveira and Benil Dariush. So how do you think the fight plays out, firstly?
Yeah, cheating. You can't ask me what's going to happen. It's one of the toughest. It's like saying that okay, हाँ ठीक है, India और Australia के बीच में clash होगा, कौन जीतने वाला?
Uh,
It's a tough question because you're dealing with two of the greatest grapplers in that division right now. Ever since Khabib left, who was the best wrestler grappler in that division, he was the hardest wall to crack to breach. And Charles and Benil Dariush are in a very unique position where they now have the chance to take on the champion. Benil will get his first title shot if he wins, and Charles will get the rematch against Islam Makhachev. So, how do I think it's going to go? I don't know. Tune in.
just to cut you there, do you see it playing out as a competitive fight, or do you see domination from any one side?
No, it's going to be highly competitive. It's going to be highly competitive because the kind of styles they both have will tend to cancel each other out. So the fight may not be decided on the ground. Sometimes when you have two guys who are both great at grappling, then the third discipline comes out. You've got two wrestlers tend to strike, two strikers tend to wrestle.
Right. Also, as you mentioned, so if Dariush goes on to win, this will be his ninth straight victory. So,
Yeah.
uh, in it's much anticipated and long depending title shot is hopefully incoming for him. But if it does not materialize, Justin Gaethje has encouraged him to go riot if he does not get the title shot this time. What do you think of this?
See, that is something that is a tactic being used by a lot of fighters here. It's the title shots have you have to understand that the UFC is a business, and at the end of the day, it's not about who is the most. I know this is wrong for me to say, but sometimes the most deserving candidate is not the right candidate, and there is a time and a place for everything. You also have to want it. You have to show your ability to be able to market it, to sell it. You can't walk in saying that I'm a consummate martial artist, I'm the greatest in the world, but if you're not going to have people watching you, it doesn't make sense. You can knock guys out in the first round, you can submit them, but if there are 5 people watching you, it doesn't make sense. It's a business.
Obviously.
So Gaethje is already such a superstar. His style is electrifying and is energetic, and he doesn't have to do much to be on the cusp of a title shot. Yeah, exactly.
Outside the octagon, sell it just through fighting.
Yeah, correct. So his style sells it automatically. Benny Dariush also is very exciting, but he's a very calm, mild-mannered guy. Doesn't talk much, doesn't speak much. He's like, हाँ आएगा तो आएगा, नहीं आएगा तो नहीं आएगा attitude.
Exactly. Also, if Charles gets his hand raised on Saturday, do you think he can make another run for the title?
Oh man, Charles Oliveira is one of the greatest lightweights I've ever seen perform. The kind of skill set he has, when his mind is right, he can do anything. And ever since the birth of his daughter, he went on a run for the longest run where he just a switch turned on in his head, and then he just looked unstoppable. And then he got stopped in Abu Dhabi, and sometimes fighters lose fights, it's normal. But if he wins, I could see that happening. I could see him going on another run.
Right. Moving on from the co-main, the headline between Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana.
So,
yeah, right there. Dana White very recently questioned Nunes' motivation to fight, considering all she has already achieved in the sport. What do you think of these doubts? Are they valid? Do you find them reasonable?
No, I mean, see, champions after a point, if you've been dominant long enough, you kind of get tired. You get tired of playing the sport. You get tired of I'll give you the best example in the world. When people criticize Sachin Tendulkar for not performing anymore, I mean, you hit 100 centuries, what else is there to do? You're done. You
Right.
have nothing else to prove. Amanda is a two-division champion. She's proved it over and over again. She came back, got revenge on her nemesis, on Juliana Pena when she beat her, and then she came back to hammer her in the rematch. According to me, if she puts her gloves down, saying it's done today, it's done. Motivation might not be 150%, but you don't know how the fight goes. If it's a competitive fight, she could come back.
Uh, if she does hang up her gloves, as you said, anytime soon, where do you think she ranks in GOAT conversations?
There's no. She is the goat.
Uh, MMA, not women's.
Oh no, that's not fair. You can't do
That's not
that.
fair.
See, firstly, when you say pound for pound, it literally means putting me or you in the cage at any weight and being able
Right.
to fight and being able to win. That
Right.
is what pound for pound means. It's not. It's the weight classes are for a reason. In the women's, absolutely, she is one of the heavier women's fighters. If she takes on somebody who's lighter, she's going to win because her skill set is right up there. She is one of the best. I would call her the female goat for sure.
Of course, of course. Do you think Aldana, given we have seen a lot of upsets in women title fights? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Do you think Aldana stands a chance of pulling off another?
Absolutely. Who doesn't? I mean, I'm always rooting for the underdog in anything, in any fight, any
Right.
sport. And I've in the on the show, The Ultimate Guide to UFC, we have a beautiful segment where we do. They call me. They started calling me Mystic Chips because I started predicting the upsets. I predicted Valentina losing. I predicted Amanda losing. And Somesh and I have this long-standing feud, long-standing contest where he's lost like a million times now for the
Right.
in the prediction game. But I'm not saying anything as of now. You'll have to come and check it out on Sunday. On
Sunday.
our show, you'll have to check us out. But yes, anybody on any given day, on any given Sunday, has a chance to upset the champion. Always. I always say contenders are hungrier than champions.
Okay. All right. One fight you would suggest audiences to watch out for in the undercard. I mean, not the
Oh,
prelims, in the whole undercard combined.
no, the whole card, I would say check out Dan Ige. Dan Ige's fight is mental. He is an incredible fighter. Whatever fights he's been in has been absolute fire. Just fire. In fact, if you look at the entire card, top to bottom, it's there are a lot of, especially in the bottom of the card, there are a few unrecognizable names to the average fan. But I'm just saying, invest in it because all these guys at some point were unknown contenders and became contenders and champions. So check out the entire card. It's going to be all fireworks.
Moving on from the 29 card, another recent story which has been making headlines: Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou signed into the PFL. So, firstly, do you think this opens up the way for retired UFC fighters, recently retired UFC fighters, to make money in the PFL? Do you
Well,
think so?
based on what Francis Ngannou has said, that he's going to pay $2 million for each of his opponents, I'd say yes, that definitely does. If I'm a fighter who's on the fringe, whose contract is about to expire with a company, and I hear, okay, you know what, Francis Ngannou is looking to pay me $2 million to face me, I'm like, dude, I would drop everything in a heartbeat and start calling Francis out. Now, whether it is a prudent strategy in the long run, considering the economics of it, and considering how marketing works in all these fight companies, Francis Ngannou has done a great job in marketing himself. He's done a great job in securing a good deal, especially the fact that he's going to be heading PFL in Africa. He's going to be doing so much more for fighters. I still want to wait and see. Give this time. Give everything time. Time will be the best judge of any deal.
What do you think of Conor McGregor's comeback? Is he going to come back? If yes, when?
Hey, why did I feel you guys were going to ask me this? Have you guys been watching The Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, yeah, I have. I have been.
So what did you like so far out of The Ultimate Fighter?
Like not much. To be very frank, not much. Because I think till now, as far as I see it playing out, I see the veterans team dominating the prospects going ahead as well in the
I mean,
veterans team.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a reality show, so I don't know how it's done.
Yeah,
But
again, I'm not sure whether it's scripted or how that happens. They can't just let it be one-sided again, right? It won't sell otherwise.
no. But there've been one-sided shutdowns in the past in the Ultimate Fighter history. Like I've seen that happen. But
Okay.
but the entire premise of the show, it has to have it culminate with the two coaches facing each other. because I would be really upset if that fight doesn't happen, especially after all the build-up. And the kind of fight it is Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. I don't even have to tell you. He moves his hand and you sell 100,000 pay-per-views. So I'm waiting to see it from only a fan's perspective in terms of how the division progresses, or is there any title implications, or will Conor McGregor come back to make another title run? I'm not worried about that at all. I'm only thinking about the amazing fun it would be to see both those guys go at each other.
Just the matchup, yeah.
Yeah.
In your personal opinion, do you see it coming to fruition?
I don't know. I really don't know at this point.
That's a very fair answer. Yeah.
I don't know. We've seen a lot of fights fall through for various reasons, and the problem is I've not heard a date. There's no date being put out. There's no like, okay, 293, 294, 295. We will fight
Also,
for sure.
USADA. Nobody's talking about it.
I'm not going there, boss.
Okay,
Sorry.
right.
USADA and testing and drug testing is
It's a whole another. Yeah.
It's another ball game.
Exactly. Rapid fires without wasting more time.
Okay.
So, in case the fight does play out, Chandler versus McGregor.
McGregor.
Okay, hardcore fan there, is it?
No. It's just you have to watch it. I'm rooting for him. I want to see him win.
There's Poirier versus Gaethje, the BMF. So, except Poirier versus Gaethje, 5 names off the top of your head who stand a chance to be called BFF.
All that entire division, that entire top 10 are all BMFs in my book.
Like you're talking about?
From Islam Makhachev to Benil Darius to Charles Oliveira to everybody, man. I can't not name that whole division.
Right, 100%. One fighter, are you aware of any other fighter from outside the organization? Any prospect who you would like the UFC to sign?
Oh man, ONE FC's lightweight fighter is Rotang. Rotang is one.
Rotang Jimungon.
Yes, I would love to see him. He's the one who actually beat Mighty Mouse, Demetrius Johnson.
Mouse, yeah.
And when he did that, I was like, I wish they would fly him down. I wish they would say, come on, bring him to the UFC. It'll be a blast.
Kamra Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman.
Oh man. Oh, I forgot about that happening.
Yeah. It's Dana has a problem with catch weight. Otherwise, I don't see any problem in the fight.
No, the problem is that Kamzat is heavy. It's very, very heavy. Kumar Usman has never had issues making weight at 80 kilos or whatever. Even if he walks around at 80, 85, Kamzat on fight night would most probably be around 90. So,
of course, sure.
So it's going to be different to see how much the weight plays out. But in terms of skill wise, Kumar Usman was one of the best before he lost his belt. He still is one of the best. He's one of the best grapplers, best wrestlers. Very difficult to control, and it's going to be fun to see them clash. But if you're asking me to choose,
yes,
I would lean towards Kamzat because he's on a hot streak.
Okay, all right. Also, on that note, do you think just deviating from the rapid fire here, do you think Chimaev should move to middleweight for good?
Yes, absolutely. Right. There's no doubt in my mind. It's not. You can't. I'm sorry. You can't compete in a division and be off weight by 8 or 10 pounds. You can't, and you expect to fight in that division. Either you make weight or you don't. Like Rogan said, like if this was a title fight, if his last fight was a title fight and he was 8 pounds off, not only would you be penalizing your purse, you'll be disqualified. You will not be allowed to fight. Exactly. So rather fight in a division that's better, that's more suited to your weight. Why would you cut that kind of weight if you can't make it, especially?
You can't have a lengthy career any which ways. Won't be able to make many defenses with that much of weight cuts. Exactly.
Dude, it's just ridiculous. If I mean, the first time, but I remember when I was in a training camp with some guys recently in Thailand, and these guys put me in the sauna room to cut weight. I was just saying, because I've tried to do that before a show. We try to get a little leaner. Weight cutting process is to remove the water from your body so that you lose those 2-3 kilos. It is brutal on you. You feel sick. You feel horrible. Let alone fight. I couldn't sit properly. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Fight at your weight class or I don't know.
Fighters say that it's the bigger fight than the fight. Weight cut is the most used
Yes,
fight.
it is. It is very, very hard to make the weight cut and remain healthy and hydrated on that day if you don't do it properly.
Uh, if Kamza just does move up to middleweight, how do you see a fight with Izzy playing out?
Whew, styles make fights, and it's difficult to say now because I would love to see him take on a Paulo Costa or Robert Whittaker before he takes on the champ. The champ is on a different level now. He's beaten his longtime nemesis, and Izzy is not easy at all. I met him, and just the way he moves. I've seen him train. His footwork is a Kamra he's a wrestler, but he doesn't have that kind of speed and tactical movement that Izzy does. So as of this point in time, no, not right now. In 2 years,
Also, we have seen
absolutely.
with Gilbert Burns on the feet. Chimbaya, he had trouble with Burns on the feet.
Yes, and Gilbert Burns is a boxer. Gilbert Burns is a boxer. He's not as well-rounded as Izzy. Izzy has kicks, high kicks, low kicks, calf kicks. He'll hit you from a distance. He'll cut corners and he'll run around you, man. It's not going to be easy.
Okay. All right. That was my last question. And again, pleasure to have you, Arjun.
Thank you so much for everything. Thank you, Sportskeeda. Check us out on Sunday, though, on the post show. And you can tell me if I was right or wrong.
Of course. Hope you catch again sometime.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. This is Abhishek from Sportskeeda MMA. We have with us here today a very special guest, a true titan and a renowned MMA analyst, an ultimate guide to UFC India. And he's a regular panelist on Sony Network, Mr. Somesh Kamra. Sir, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Abhishek.
So without further ado, let's jump straight to UFC 289. So UFC 289 is just around the corner. And it's set to go down at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver, Canada. So in the co-main event, we have the return of Charles Oliveira, and he's set to lock horns with Beneil Dariush. So how do you see the fight playing out, and who do you think gets it done?
Well, it's a very interesting junction that both these fighters are at currently. Whilst I thought Charles Oliveira is one of the most dominant lightweights ever in the history of MMA, we saw what Islam Makhachev's grappling did to a black belt jiu-jitsu guy. Coming into this fight after that loss, I think Charles Oliveira may not be the same dominant Charles Oliveira because he has faced adversity before this, and Beneil Dariush puts immense amount of pressure and he doesn't go down with any kind of shots put in front of him. So I'm assuming it's going to be a very, very close fight. If you ask me, on paper, Charles Oliveira should dominate it, but in the sport of MMA, you don't know how this works out. My money is currently on Beneil Dariush.
That's an interesting take, and that's why we love the sport, because of its unpredictability, right?
Absolutely.
So speaking of Beneil Dariush, Justin Gaethje has been encouraging him to riot if he does not get a title shot next. And if he wins this weekend, that would be his 9th straight victory. So do you think the winner gets an immediate title shot? And what should Beneil Dariush do moving forward?
See, the UFC is a private organization. Sometimes people cannot understand that, some fighters win 3 fights and get a title shot. Some fights, even though it's taken them 9 fights, the fighters don't get a title shot. So, there's no real MMA maths that we can apply to this. But what I can say is, after Islam Makhachev defeated Charles Oliveira, he was offered an immediate title rematch, to which Charles Oliveira declined. I'm assuming this particular fight, Beneil Dariush versus Charles Oliveira, the winner is going to be offered a title shot.
That makes sense. So moving on, in the main event of UFC 289, we have the return of the Lioness, Amanda Nunes. She returns to action against Mexican powerhouse Irene Aldana. So Dana White recently questioned regarding Nunes' motivation, considering all her achievements in the sport. So what are your thoughts on this intriguing matchup? And again, what is your prediction for the fight?
So I do not agree with Dana White. I think Amanda Nunes is like the John Jones of the female fighters. She is truly the greatest of all time. Uh, Her loss versus Juliana Pena was, you know, typically what happens is when you're on a 10 fight, 11 fight, 12 fight, whatever winning streak, it becomes very difficult to, you know, overestimate your opponent. You always go with the intention, ki, yeah, it's going to be just another day in office for me. And sometimes there's a surprise element. And fighters, I believe, fighters need that loss. They need that loss in their career to retune their minds and say, I'm not immortal. I need to come back. Every challenge in front of me is going to be difficult and I need to overcome it. So I personally believe she underestimated Juliana Pena, but that loss was very, very important. We saw what it did in the
Yeah.
rematch. In the rematch, Amanda Nunes was way more motivated. She had a new strategy. She came out
Yeah.
southpaw, and Juliana Pena had no answer to any of her shots. Also, that right hook that she was giving was very interesting. So I do believe a fighter who learns from the loss and comes back in a strong manner like this is almost bulletproof in the head. The only other fighter I see who really did this was Anderson Silva. But even he was showboating versus Chris Weidman and he got knocked out. So,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we are all humans. We all make mistakes. But I don't know how Amanda Nunes can lose this.
That's right. And it's interesting you say that she showed a different facet to her game, because the Amanda Nunes that we know of, she has this tendency to fight with, if I put it, reckless abandonment, because she has that confidence in her and her right hand. But in the rematch, like you rightfully
Absolutely.
mentioned, she showed a proper, well-rounded game with wrestling. So do you expect that to come into play against Irene Aldana?
So Irene Landana's two strong points that I believe are her crisp, like striking. So she
Mm.
comes from that Mexican Lobo gym, which also has Alexa Grasso. So
Yeah.
she's got that very crisp boxing, which cannot be really taken for granted because couple of good shots and you could be lying down flat on the mat. So I do believe she's going to kick her legs. I do believe she's going to include a lot of wrestling in her game. But Amanda Nunes is one of those crazy fighters who likes to even give the pain. So she took Juliana Pena in the second fight to 5 rounds, and you saw how she beat her up. So she was cutting her up, she was taking her down. She was doing all sort of painful tactics, possibly to tell her, "You will never beat me again." You
Just to
know,
prove a point.
and as I said, people like John Jones are like this. Even though they can finish you in the first round, they will take you all 5 rounds and they will break your morale completely. So I do believe she's one of those crazy fighters who likes to do that and end people's careers. But it's a good matchup for Irene Landana. She could be, if I'm not mistaken, the third or the fourth Mexican champion. She has
Yeah.
nothing to lose out here. She just needs to go, be fearless, and put on a great show for the fans like us.
So, speaking of Amanda Nunes, where do you rank her in the GOAT list, like across the history of the sport, the women's division, the men's division? Where do you rank her in the list?
So that's a very interesting question because a lot of people ask me that question. But see, what happens with any new sport? MMA is a very new sport. So what happens with a new sport is it evolves so quickly, it evolves so rapidly that 5 years down the line, maybe there is somebody who's much better than Amanda. Amanda is the goat
Yeah.
of this era, I would say. Like how Ronda Rousey was the goat of her era. So they can, I doubt they can ever be the greatest of all time ever in the history of any sport, because what Larry Holmes did for boxing was very different from what Mike Tyson did for boxing, was very different from what Floyd Mayweather did for boxing. So I think each person is the goat of their era. Ronda Rousey, of course, got the stardom, got the lights. She's a good looking person, she finished fights. And what Amanda Nunes did to her just showed exactly what a new age hungry fighter can do to the goat of their era. So, I think it's unfair to put one person on that pedestal at the moment. But as of now, of this era, maybe the last 6, 7 years, I think she is undisputed. What she did to Chris Cyborg, what she did to Holly Holm, what she did to,
Unbelievable.
Ronda Rousey, I think it's just unbelievable.
That's right. Unbelievable. And it's like GSP says, I mean, the athletes of today's generation will always be better than the ones we grew up watching. So,
Absolutely. Did he say that?
yeah, he did say that on
Oh,
the Joe
wow.
Rogan show.
Okay. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just quickly jump into the biggest superstar of the sport, Conor McGregor. And the reason I ask you
Oh,
this
yeah.
is because the reason I ask you this is because we all know that he's going to fight Michael Chandler next. It's just a matter of when, where.
Yes.
And we all know the case that a victory for Conor McGregor, just one victory, brings him back into the title convention picture. So that's why I asked you about the Dariush and Oliveira situation. Where does Conor fit into the whole mix? And do you think we get the return of the Notorious by the end of the year?
So that's a very, very good question. In fact, his entire team, they are very, very close to me and we chat pretty often. And I always ask them, that which version of Conor McGregor will show up. So, what typically happens with a mega star like Conor McGregor, if I have to put it in layman's terms, it's like trying to get Rajnikant and Amitabh Bachchan in one movie. The dates will
That's
never
a
match, the
perfect
budgets will
analogy.
never match. So it's very difficult to get him because he's got so many commitments outside. And as a fighter, he himself has to be convinced that yes, he has to come back and perform at the highest level because doing a business or doing a movie is a very different ball game from prepping yourself, coming back in the USADA pool. You have to prep yourself all the way, maybe for 3 months, 4 months before you come back to, maybe the fight of the year, if you may say that. Because honestly, if you look at Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor, these are perfect contenders for an absolute firework match because both don't go to the ground. Both are hard punchers, both move forward. So, it's like how two oxes just kind of,
Yeah.
go versus each other. So, having said that, I don't know in what weight category will they be fighting. So, to put them in that same league of Dariush and Charles Oliveira may be a little difficult because there's also the BMF title that is up for the line when Dustin Poirier is fighting Justin Gaethje for the BMF title, and that's also in the lightweight division. So now we have two belts out there. One is the lightweight championship belt, and one's a BMF belt. So if Conor comes back into that division, we don't know what belt he really wants to go for. So I think it'll be very interesting. I don't see Conor fighting for the belt at least for the next couple of fights because Chandler is a good fight, but it's not there yet for the title fight. Is what I believe. But honestly, the predictions that we make and what business decisions the UFC make are completely different. It's like Sean O'Malley fighting for the bantamweight title. So sometimes I cannot understand that, especially when Chito Vera has beaten him and Chito is nowhere in the scene. I can't understand how Sean O'Malley gets the title shot.
That makes perfect sense. Again, Mr. Somesh Kamra, thank you so much for your time, and it has indeed been a fun and insightful conversation. Before we conclude, I would like to ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go.
Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, your pick for the BMF championship.
Oh my God. Uh, Dustin Poirier.
5 fighters, past or present, worthy of being called the BMF.
I think it would be as it. Do you want the UFC fighters or any fighters?
Any would do.
I think Fedor Emelianenko. It could be girls also, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think it would be Amanda Nunes. It would be John Jones, Wanderlei Silva, and maybe Chuck Liddell.
That's the fantastic fire right there. Next question, Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamara Usman. Your pick.
Oh wow, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Even though my heart says Khamzat, my head says Kamaru. So I'll go for Kamaru.
John Jones versus Tyson Fury in an MMA fight.
Oh, I mean, for me, it's John Jones all the way.
Fighters who definitely deserve a spot in the Mount Rushmore of the UFC. Your three picks?
I think it's going to be Anderson Silva, it's going to be John Jones, and maybe Amanda Nunes.
Okay. And three fighters from the UFC who would do very good in the WWE.
Oh, wow. I would say Conor McGregor. Who are the other fighters who would do well? Because you need to have a little bit of showiness that comes
Yeah,
along with the entire thing. I would say Israel Adesanya
that's a good pick.
and I don't know. I think only these two for now. I think these two for now.
Fair enough. And the last one for me, one fantasy matchup that you would like to see in the Power Slap League.
Power Slap League. Wow, I would love to see Dana versus Scott Coker.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So, Mr. Kamra, it was an absolute delight talking to you. It was an
Thank
insightful
you so much,
conversation.
Abhishek.
UFC 289 goes down this weekend, and you can catch all the exclusive coverage, the pre-match analysis, and the fight itself only on Sony Network. Thank you again.
And Sony Live.
And Sony Live.